I'm here with Burt and Brett. They're partners in life and in work.
He's not my life partner. We're not life partners. Let's make that clear. Nothing wrong with that, but we're not life partners.
It's okay, honey.
It's all right.
He's
so in denial.
It's really sad.
It's so sad.
It is.
It's a beautiful thing. We want to celebrate.
So
we want to celebrate you too.
Yes, we're celebrating the seventh Python. It's the story of Neil Innes. And Neil Innes is probably one of the most influential rock songwriters and satirists of the last 50 years. And no one knows who he is. And this movie, against his will, I think, will let people know who he is.
How did you get started on this project?
I met Neil about 10 years ago. I was filming a documentary on John Lennon, and it was the life and death of John Lennon. And we went to London and we were interviewing friends of Lennon, and we were interviewing people that worked with him. I wanted to interview the guy who played him in the Ruddles. Neil, of course, played Ron Nasty in the Ruddles. I wanted to get him in to get his point of view. I also knew that Neil had a connection with the Beatles. I worked with Neil that day. Neil didn't trust us at all. I said, what's John Lennon's legacy? And he said, John Lennon's legacy is to never trust a journalist. He wasn't sure what we were going to do with the interview that we did with him. In the end, Neil liked it. Make a long story longer, I got in touch with Neil through a woman who operated his website, neilinnes.org. It's not his, it's a website that was dedicated to Neil that Neil didn't even know about. And this website had managed to gather all of Neil's fans from around the world. You know, maybe 50 people in Japan, and 200 in Germany, and people in Iceland, and people in America. And suddenly this community had formed on the internet around Neil Innes. So what we did was, I talked to Neil, found out that they were doing a concert here in Hollywood. He was coming to Hollywood for the first time in about 9 years. And we shot it, and we interviewed some of his friends.
And then we got the Pythons.
So you started shooting when?
We started shooting this right around the corner here, in 2003. It was the day that I believe, Iraq War began.
That's right.
And it was the night before the Oscars.
And it was no coincidence either. It was all planned that way.
Or one or the other, yeah. That made it certain that nobody's going to come to the concert.
Our production really started the war. We blamed it on George Bush.
That was that. So we shot Neil there. We did interviews with Neil. We shot the rehearsals, and then we spent a few years raising money to finish it, which Brett did.
Which we did. And then we started shooting. When did we start shooting? Last March?
Yeah, we've been working on this solidly for the last 13 months.
Where do you think this succeeds, and where do you think it fails as a documentary?
I think it succeeds on the level of introducing the world to a great talent. I think it fails in that we're on Hollywood Boulevard right now. We're on the Walk of Fame, and people in this town only really care about 16-year-old celebutards who don't contribute anything to pop culture, don't contribute anything to society. Someone like Neil Innes, who has contributed to our vocabulary and our musical vocabulary and contributed to our culture, is basically swept aside in favor of the TMZ crowd. It fails in the fact that, perhaps it would not get the same audience that, TMZ episode might get. But anyway, this is just my little way of...
It was tough raising money for this?
Brett?
Hey, there's my dog. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on, Chris. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to say hi to my daughter. I haven't seen her. Yeah. You know what? It wasn't tough raising money for it, because the amount of money we had to raise to finish it wasn't that much we had to raise, although it was expensive to do this. But it was very difficult in explaining to people who Neil was, and once they figured out who he was and they saw the phenomenal body of work the guy's done over the last 40 years, they go, oh, wow, that's who he... Now I can put a face to the work, because everybody knew the Ruddles, especially the age group I was getting the money from. So it wasn't that difficult. It was surprisingly not as difficult as I even thought it would be, because once they figured out who he was and what his background is, they understood the success of it. And it's also global, which is real important, because he's got a worldwide fan base.
Did your daughter object when you sold her into slavery to finance this movie?
You know what? No, nor did my son, who, by the way, I sold him into slavery. Well, but he's coming home soon. But you know what? You got to do what you got to do to get movies made. Seriously, and as soon as my wife's done walking the street, she's going to come to the premiere.
Aside from money, what were the biggest obstacles to making this movie succeed?
Wow. The biggest obstacles?
What do you have to overcome to make this?
I think you have to overcome today's pop culture that we helped create, and today's celebrity culture. Neil,
It's those trash tabloid TV shows like Hard Copy.
we're the ones who started it, you know. But then again,
you are the problem.
well,
Yes, exactly.
At least in the days when we did Hard Copy and A Current Affair, if Marlon Brando walked into the room, we would feel a sense of awe because we were in the presence of somebody great. We wouldn't make fun of him and call him a big fat whale, or make fun of him when he died. And that is what was lost. I mean,
Right? You call Brando a big fat whale?
no,
You bastard.
that's not what I said. I wouldn't call him that.
Oh, okay.
I said I wouldn't call him that.
Speak of the dead like that.
But what was the question? We're not life partners. by
What
the
did
way.
you have to? What were the biggest obstacles you had to overcome to make this movie work?
You don't want to know
Make it work.
I'll tell you
One part is Neil.
Yes, thank
Neil
you.
does not want to be the center of a documentary. He spent 40 years avoiding the spotlight.
I was just going to say that. The hardest part was Neil. And when I say hard, it wasn't difficult. It was actually fun to do. But Neil has spent, like Burt said, 40 years of avoiding the spotlight. Background. He is a true artist, for lack of a better term. That's our next documentary right there. It's called Yes, I'm Crazy, but I'm Happy. Anyway, that was the most difficult thing, is convincing Neil that he should come out of his shell and be proud of what he's done, because he's done some phenomenal work. I mean, listen to those Ruddle songs which he wrote.
I don't think so.
They're phenomenal. They really are. They're phenomenal melodies. They have the harmonics that remind you of that time, of the Beatles, early Beatles, but they're really, really phenomenal melodies and lyrics. He's one of my favorites. I mean, I love his songwriting, I love his melodies, but he's real tough to work with because he just doesn't want the spotlight.
So how did you get him to cooperate with you?
Well, there was a lot of whining, and we shot it anyway.
No, I mean, Neil is a performer.
Neil's and a
he is an
perfectionist.
artist, and he loves to perform, and he loves people, and he loves artists, and he loves doing his work. What he doesn't like is that spotlight and that celebrity attention. He likes to deal with his audience one person at a time, and that's why he has this worldwide audience. You know, it's a cult following, but it's also one that can move beyond the cult when you hear his music and see his work.
But then on top of all that, we've had 7 distribution offers and 2 soundtrack offers. So we must have done something right.
And
or wrong.
Have you picked one to go with?
No. We're waiting, and not for greed. We're waiting because we wanted to get this energy from here, and so people can. No one has seen this really. 22 people or 25 people have seen it, and no one has seen it.
I've never let anybody see it.
How much time did you get to spend with Neil while you were running a camera?
Oh,
We shot hundreds of hours of footage.
Hundreds of hours of footage.
Oh
Neil?
yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, when I was in England with
I
him,
was in England for 5 days. We shot here for.
we shot with him here for a week or so. We've had other stuff. We've shot him on how many continents? In Australia, in America,
Canada,
and
no.
not Canada, and in England.
In England.
3 continents. That's close enough. Yeah.
And we have enough footage. We could do another documentary.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff.
What has he been doing since The Meaning of Life? I assume that was his last Monty Python.
He has done children's programming in the UK. He has done. This is getting louder, son. So he's done children's programming. He's done radio. He reunited the Bonzos 2 years ago. Went on a tour with them. Put out an album last year with the Bonzos. He's released about 6 albums on his own. So yeah, he's stayed very active. Plus his painting and his artwork. So he's done a lot of stuff. I'm sorry. One other thing about this documentary is
I liked your song, and I enjoyed your singing.
one other thing about this documentary that's a bit different is this isn't a behind the music. This isn't one of these archival documentaries where you're going to sit and watch an hour and a half of old footage and see old stills being push in on stills and then see the old concert stuff. We deliberately did not do this because we've been there and done that. For 10 years we've been making documentaries and moving stills around and showing archival footage. We wanted this to be today, and we wanted this to be about Neil today. All of the historic stuff you see in this is done through Python-esque animation, which is done by Bonnie Rose, who's the person that started Neil's website. We also really, in wanting this to be interactive, to allow the audience to do their own director's cut, deliberately and actively lead the audience to leave the theater, get on their computer, and go to the internet and go find that footage you want to see. You know, we're not going to waste your time showing you stuff you can watch at home on YouTube. And so that's part of it as well. This is kind of a new kind of musical documentary.